Good morning. And really what everybody's wanting to know, or what I'm wanting to know, is who in the hell made that bread pudding? Oh my gosh, I'm not the Marion type, but if I could get this thing up, whoever they are, I'm going to go down on one knee today and meet those people. Well, I know everybody's in business, and so like on Wednesday, I gave a talk at the Camargo Club in Cincinnati to the Garden Club ladies, but I want to kind of focus a little bit about business. And let's see, I can't see. Let's see. All my gardens look like Monet's. That's how I put these. So when we take on a new project, I mean, the client, is number one, because they're the ones you got to make them happy when you leave. They're the ones that are going to spread your name and save you a lot of money in advertising if you make people happy. You listen to what they're saying and pay attention to details. Sometimes I go in and say, everybody has colors, ideas. Well, I look inside, and generally, what you have on your interior, that carries throughout to the garden. Then number two, the site. I approach everything, and anybody that really knows me, like Krista and Ann Sabatino Hardy, and I approach each job the way I meet people. I don't know a thing about them. I'm just interested in meeting you, and I want to see this place. I don't have preconceived notions. I think that's good to have. Each one becomes your individual. Coming up to the third thing, the story. When we go to a place, it's trying to figure out how to get to the real story of this place. Like with Maker's Mark, they, up until Rob Samuels took over, they have never had a designer. And in fact, his dad was my worst enemy. He said, "We don't need a GD designer. We need somebody to mow the lawn." I was like, "Welcome. I'm happy to be here. I'm ready to start working." But then, what he was saying, his mother had designed this whole concept of bringing tourists and bringing people into the distillery, when before it was just a factory that you couldn't get into, really, most places. So I had to work with what she had in her vision and carry that out with new paths, that would connect it, the welcome center, trying to integrate and make it feel like it's part of what it originally was. With Castle and Key, how many people have been to Castle and Key? Well, yeah, that place. Well, you all got to get going. Come on. That place is unbelievable. But that, they had a story there. But this is where I grew up, on the Rockcastle River. My parents chose not to have TV. And I always say, I don't know too much about anything, but what do you want to talk about? Because I'm good for a dinner conversation, because I read everything growing up. And, but just playing, having a great thing with nature was so important. And it still is to this day. And that's what I do. I love what I do. I ended up going to University of Kentucky at the last minute. I always say that's the best 12 years I ever spent in my life. So much fun. Joined a fraternity, AGR, agriculture. You had to be a farmer to be in. I worked on my fraternity brother's horse and tobacco farms for extra money in the summers, and I loved it. And I knew I wanted to do something in agriculture, but I had no idea what I was going to do. I ended up graduating 4 years, believe it or not. And I think it's called business communications. It's a BA in communications. That's what it was. I just didn't have to take math. That was good. But then I got out of school. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a job. I had a job I was the social chairman of my fraternity, planning parties. That was the best job. And So I got a chance to move to New York City. My friend had moved up there, and I was going to spend a couple of months and then come back home and start a business here in Lexington, because I've always loved Lexington. And my family, we came up here every other day of my whole life since childhood that's where we shopped. So I thought, well, I know gardens, even though I've only taken horticulture classes. I've never had a design course. But my parents would just drag us to every historic home all over, everywhere we traveled. We was like, why can't we go to a baseball game? We had to go to a historic home. But I learned so much. And so I made these cards up, and they said, Jon Carloftis, rooftop garden designer. I had never been on a roof in my life. But I did know a couple things. Upper East Side, that's where they looked like they had some roof gardens up there, and I gave them around to doormen and elevator men, and this is in 1988, and I said, give it to the person on top. And if you look up there, this is what I started with a lot of times, and there's the after, before and afters. But I learned so much, and my first client gave me my first chance. She, and then through her is all word of mouth. But everything was, I know that sounds like it was so easy, and it was like boom, and then all of a sudden you're working for Julianne Moore. But everything is difficult to do in New York City. I ended up, after a couple years, I lived in 303 West 18th Street, 10011. But I bought this little farmhouse in Bucks County. It was 62 miles from Manhattan. And I would work on that and redo it and make it into something nice. There's my little garage there that I had. It was my party house. But I tried to make each day enjoyable. And I would wake up early, then stop at the nurseries, and I only go to family-owned nurseries, because if you go to a family business, they know the importance of delivering what you want, getting what you want. And I do that today. I shop at Pemberton's, greenhouses, those sisters, oh my gosh, I love it. They've only been in business since 1873. But we have choices. You can go to the big corporation and that's going to go somewhere else, or you can go to a family-owned business. And my whole life, I've always hand-picked, because if there's 20 plants, some of them have better vigor, they're better shaped. But when you're dealing with 3,000 or 4,000 plants, you have to give up some of this control. And that's why I go to Todd Kelly Nursery and again, Pemberton's, the Wilson's, Jennifer Wilson, because they get you what you ask for. And that's a big part of the equation of getting rid of that. So this is kind of what we do. I'm going to show you. We take a place, and this is the before, and then we design the pool. And there's the after. This is in Bardstown. She had she's the president of iHeartRadio. She's going to retire here, but she's one of the Talbots, and her name is Julie. And they redid her house, her great-grandfather's house, and they had these pieces of millstones that she played on as a child. We integrated them into the garden because they were going to be taken to another property, and I was like, wait, this is part of the story. This is what you should enjoy. And then this was on Richmond Road. This was just featured in Garden Gum magazine. And there's the before, looking back out from the house. And we thought we'd do a focal point back there at the very end, so it makes the garden look better. Look, there's before, here's after, And then there it is. And Matt Carter, who is a good friend of mine, did the interior. When I suggested doing this beautiful chandelier, because, see, nothing scares me. Like, some people don't do it. Do whatever you want to do. We could all get hit going out of here right, today. Be happy. And but look what we did here. The first thing we did was change the driveway. Why not? Why wouldn't you change the driveway? See? And it opened up a whole new area, and the place looks bigger. Before in 1920s, the road went right next to the house. Now look at it. So, and that wasn't even in the plan. But I said, you got to change this driveway. And they did it. This is Thornton Oil in Louisville. And we came to that beautiful house, and we thought there's the after. You know, we thought the fountain was out of scale and it needed a little greening up. Look, just go through there. Yeah, look at this. Here's their guest house, and so. But it's just fun. Every day is fun. Here's their vegetable garden. We can just go through this pretty quick. And then, and then how times change. 15 years ago, this was never come up, but people say, the husband always peeks in and goes, I want a fire pit. I want the cigar bar. You know what I mean? So you got to keep changing, and you got to see what's going. And so I always ask the husband that, and that makes him feel good, you know. But and then with colors, you know, very few people use red, and it's such a treat to use people's colors because it takes you beyond the people that I know that are in design that do the same things over and over and over again. And I know you're known for a look. Here's my dance partner, Debbie Long. But you know, that's what makes you grow is your client. And it makes you go out beyond, you know, your comfort zone. And this is, have you all been to Dudley's? I hope, best place in town. And she's the best dancer in town too. So looking in here, doing public spaces, and you know, one of the things that people said was, when I built it, a couple people said, well, it's not this like explosion. I said, that's not what this was about. It should just blend right in with the inside. It shouldn't be this over-the-top thing unless you want it that way. But here's Castle and Key. Look at this unbelievable spot. And every time I go in there, I've been there 5 years building it, and we did not have plans to look at because I'm not that smart. There's no way I could even look that up. Now all of a sudden people are sending pictures of what it looked like, but we just did it the way we felt that it should be done. And it turns out it's pretty close to what E.H. Taylor did. But you know, one of the things that we did here is trying to keep the language of what it was and not overdo. You know, the first thing was, we're going to put stone around that old concrete fountain and make it perfect. And I was like, hold on now, hold on. You've got this, you know, you've already got a story. If you want to make it all new, then just go up on that hill and build your brand new place. But you've already got it here. Then we'll go through here real quick. But that's been a treat because it brings people in. They have go to the bourbon tours. Theirs is different, and everything they do is different. And I appreciate how they do it. They've got such a good system. And the next one here, I'm going to go through here. I'm going to show you Maker's Mark here. I think that's coming up. But this has been a really wonderful part of my life. When we came in, everything was asphalt. And that's what they did in the 50s. You'd asphalt right up to the buildings. And my job was to get rid of that, green up the space, but still make it where you could walk through there or a truck could go through there. And when we did it, you know, again, I had a lot of pushback from his dad. But then after about a year and a half, he figured out that I was trying to make it better. But like using these trees, there was so much shade down there, I almost gave him a heart attack when I cut a bunch of those trees down. And but we put in trees, these columnar trees that give drama without taking up your shade. You know, there's all these little things that you can do with plants and design. And so, excuse me, let me get my water. Excuse me, sorry. And I love how they're doing with all these art exhibits and art installations. Rob Samuels, I'll just tell you, when I first met him, I thought, what are you going to do after your dad, who is the biggest full dose of somebody I've ever met in my life? And I say that in a good way, because I like a full dose. If they can back it up, I like a full dose. But what he's done, he has brought in art exhibits. He's brought in people, reasons to come down there. You know, the restaurant. I said, if I have to eat at the Cozy Corner with the K in Loretto one more time, where they still smoke on the cigarette, or, you know, on the tables, I can't stand it. They put a restaurant in there. But they get 130,000 visitors a year. Maker's Mark is unbelievable. And I've just been lucky to do that, to be a part of that. And I think let's get through here. Oh, baby girls. But this has been the greatest thing that ever happened. I bartended one party here back in 1987, and I was in there. I remember climbing through that little gate. You couldn't see the house, and they put me in a little hallway, and I thought, if anybody would do this ceiling in a little tiny hallway, they must be crazy. I want to know more, and I want this house. So I've been waiting for this to come up for sale, and I never thought I'd leave New York or my little farmhouse, but when I bought this, I just found it hard to go home or go back to Bucks County, and that's why I've moved down here, and it's been the greatest thing I've ever done, is restoring this. Look at the window, bars on the windows, there's raccoons living in there. It was a mess. But here's before and after. And every morning, you know, like on Wednesday night, those nice ladies from Camargo, look, I've always had a swimming pool for my girls there. You know, being able to share this and have groups in, and it's been a joy, because a lot of people do it and then they close the gates. And that's what I love, what has happened with the horse tours. You know, it brings, you have to open up. You know, you can't just be behind gates and bars. You know, well, it's where I hope I don't want to end up anyway. That's why I have a nice accountant. But just look through here. I mean, this place, that's my view. I don't believe in an office because they scare me. And my office is a little kitchen table. And so I can cook, and I like something like cooking all the time. And I give it to my friends, or I eat it, but I'm always giving food away because I just like doing that. And with my dogs, but this has just been the greatest thing that I've ever done, I want to say. And it has been a great business tool, because it's got to look good, and people have to see what you do. And I brought in a couple from Louisville, and we gave a plan, but when they saw what we did, then they fell in love with it. Here, look at this, 1980 garage. The pool's like me, it's swift yet shallow. All at the same time, it has these little jets. And salty. But, you know, business is, you gotta make it pleasurable. If you're not enjoying it, nobody else is gonna enjoy it. Work with people, and it's the relationship. You get to know the people. And I love, going into New York City was so hard. Everything was hard. You had to park and get the $115 tickets if you double parked, and who has a day to take off to get out of it. And then I would, the superintendent of the building was, the Hitler of his building. He was the ruler. But you have to give respect and you have to work through it. And then you get through him, you have to go through the elevator man who's mad because he's in an elevator for 8 hours a day. And I learned what you do with that. You give them a little pint of Kentucky, little something, and they're happy. It makes them happy. And then you get up to the top with these plants, and then you have the house manager, and you have to deal with her. Then you have the maids, and I learned, cześć, do widzenia. That's when the Polish, if they were Polish, I learned how to say hello and goodbye, because people, they want to be, you have to be interested in people, and they're going to do the best for you if you're that way. And I'm so interested in my folks that work with me, and I have my crew, and I want to introduce Thomas McKinley. He worked for beer money when he was a freshman one summer. He was going to be an engineer, and then went back to school in landscape architecture, and I just happened to run into him a year and a half ago. And he said, give my resume to somebody. I know you know everybody, and I do, because I'm interested in people, yes. And I said, I'll be happy to give this to my friends. And that next morning I had coffee, and I was like, this is going nowhere. I need you. I've been in business 30 years, and I need you. He started 2 days after graduation, and it has been just nonstop. It's just been great. We argue about every little, respectfully argue, like they used to do in politics, remember? We argue about every little thing because we're trying to do the right thing and make it right. And I'm just telling you, I've been in business, this is my 31st year, and I've never had a better year than last year. So, and it's all word of mouth too. But bringing in new ideas, it's just wonderful. And you've got to just keep looking, like I can answer you back on an email. That is all I can do on a computer. I didn't grow up, I still don't have a TV in my house to this day. So technology is tough for me, but I can do almost everything else. I'm pretty good. So questions? Yes?
Where are you on chemical versus natural breeds, grass, bushes, trees?
Where, did everybody hear that? Where am I on chemicals? And as far as, of course it makes sense not to use chemicals. I mean, sometimes I have a little eyebrow and I'm thinking, this is 3 Mile Island, it's that long. There's some chemical that I had that made it grow like that. But yeah, I try not to use them at all, but there are times where if a client said, these are dying, they're eaten up with all these things, I will say, well, we can do it this way or we can do it that way. And you make the decision. I rarely use them, but to avoid it, I don't use roses. You'll never see me put a rose in anybody's garden because they attract. You'll never see me put a crabapple, because if you put a crabapple in your yard, everything in the world comes in to eat that. So there's ways to fight against that. But again, I'm driving a car with gasoline out of here, so we're all sinners. Yes.
How did you handle the water requirements on your rooftop garden? Is that difficult?
How did you handle the water requirements on the rooftop garden? One of the best things to do as a garden designer and installer, we design and install, and hopefully they have someone to maintain, that comes in there after, because I don't want to be in that business. And then you have to meet the nice irrigation person, and everything had to be on a little drip tube. You couldn't put a sprayer, because if the spray happened to go down below and hit someone's window, I called it, you've heard of what's called penthouse envy, I call it. That everybody below, they would, looking for trouble. So can't have anything land, petals and all that. But it was actually very efficient because it's drip irrigation. So, and yes.
When you're planting, you plan every detail, or you plan broadly and allow alchemy and just the inspiration to come into play?
Good question. Did everybody hear that? Okay. If you plan, do you plan every little detail, or do you do it broadly and then it comes into play? Definitely the latter. I mean, we listen to what they want, and then we're there to help them along. And like just the other day, I forget what it was, but I remember one of my clients asked for something. I said, well, I would love to do it, but I'm not God. That's not going to work here for you. And it says, you got to be honest. I'm very honest with things. And then, but you get more into it. And then we don't take on a job unless we absolutely love it. I don't, could have gotten huge, and then you lose control. But, Thomas, I am on it. With my clients, I'm on it. I know everything about it, and their children too. Yes.
How do you balance, whether you or somebody at home, how do you balance like a beautiful design with sustainability?
I try to give plants that now they're, the old days, say example, oak leaf hydrangeas, they grow this tall, they're beautiful, I love them. Then you have to trim them down, and then they're ugly for a long time, and then they get too big. So now I use plants that have, and they're not GMO, but they grow to a finite height. There's varieties of oak leaf hydrangea that they just get this big. Or like the picture of the Kaziz, as in Garden Gun, those are called Bobo hydrangea. They only grow that tall, and that's it. So you get rid of maintenance. And then I use a lot of native plants. But again, I'm not, I love a vegetarian meal, but I'm not vegetarian. And I love native plants, but I'm not that guy. If somebody wants something else, I'm just not extreme, very moderate about everything. Just trying to make it as easy for them, less watering. So that's sustainability. That's what I'm thinking of. Any other questions? Yes?
How do you resist the urge to overdo it?
How do I resist the urge to overdo it? Well, I'll just tell you. I'm the youngest of 6, a Leo, and you're the dragon. There's no way I could resist overdoing it. That's who I am. It was inevitable. No. You have to, if the house is over the top, then the garden can be over the top. I just work off of the architecture. I don't come in there thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I just work off of a house, and it kind of tells you what you need to do and the style. So it always matches that. The best thing is compliments when people say, wow, do you have to do anything here at Botherham? I took down 70 trees the first month. They were no good, and leave the big ones. But that's when we do a job and they go, wow, did you have to do much here? Because it looks like it's been there. And yes.
What would you say your mother and the Rockcastle Trading Company influenced your life?
Did everybody hear that? What would my mother and growing up on the Rockcastle River influence my life? I learned she's an optimist. I'm an optimist, What did they say? What did Churchill say? Winston Churchill? A pessimist looks for every difficulty and an opportunity, and an optimist looks for every opportunity and difficulty. And that's the way I am. I wake up to this ashtray. The best way, what is it? The most efficient way to do it is to do it. And I am that person. Because I just dive right in and do it. And I learned that from my mother. And I also learned from my father. He said, be yourself. why, you know, like I know when I moved to New York and people would say, I remember this one guy, he's like, lose the Kentucky accent, lose the Kentucky clothes, you're in New York now, become a New Yorker. And I remember telling to mom and daddy, and they go, honey, you don't need to change a thing. You just need to take over. Now, I saw that guy later on. I was like, here's some money. Here's some change. So, be true to who you are. Be authentic. If you're not in business, they can smell it. And be truthful, because you can't, the truth always comes out, and just be truthful and work yourself to death. I mean, gosh, that's what I do. I love it. And then I want to say the last thing, find a hobby, because I'm like a machine. I do work, play, party. Everything is to the hilt with me. There's nothing, just normal, and but it'll kill you after a while. You know what I did? I do English writing lessons, and for that hour on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I can't think about business. I can't think about all the jobs that are going on. You got to have a hobby that takes your mind off of it, because I think you'll be a lot healthier person. Because I know my life has changed from riding this horse. All I'm thinking is hanging on. Yes.
What's the most challenging part about working in Lexington?
What's the most challenging part about working in Lexington?
And what's
And
most rewarding?
more rewarding. Oh gosh, every day of my life, I wake up and I look, oh my gosh, it's beautiful here. I love the people. I love the new people that move in because of the beauty. And people say, how do you get all these friends? Because that takes some work, because I don't have negative people at my pool on a Sunday Funday. If negative, you're not going to be there. I like fun, interesting, intelligent people. And Lexington attracts that, and they're all here because we've just got the best place. And when I was at the Camargo Club, the fancy club in Cincinnati on Wednesday, everybody would say, "You're from Lexington? That is such a good place to be from." So we've got it so good here. The challenging part, I don't know. I don't see any. I think we are so lucky with what we have in the food scene, and people like Griffin Van Meter, who started taking, like Jefferson Street. When I was in college, that was our hazing thing. They dropped us off there, and if we could get back alive, we were worthy to be a brother. So, but it's changing and making. There's just this whole brewing thing with beer. I didn't like beer because it tasted bad. Now I love beer. Because we're making it. They're making it here. And the bourbon industry, each state has something, right? I give talks to everywhere and go usually at art museums. Every state has something that you could say great about it. But I have to say, horses, bourbon, now these great breweries, beauty, agriculture, we've got a lot to be happy with. And it's just trying to teach people, and people have these misconceptions, and they will, if they've not been here. And then you bring them here. We bring these groups in. I give a talk at Tuckahoe Women's Club in Richmond, Virginia. They come in groups of 50. They spend 3 days. They spend about $80,000 in the local economy. And then they go back to Richmond. And they love Lexington, and they love Louisville, and they love Kentucky. And we try to, it's hospitality. That's what we got to.
I have time for one more.
Yes. One more question, anybody?
Oh, you have one in the back.
Yes.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I was going to ask you, you are so spiritually inclined, and you do it so authentically. What did you do to make your decision to give back and to do it often and frequently and authentically?
Well, I don't have children, and those little bratty nieces aren't getting a damn thing when I die. I'm just kidding. No, you know, when you give to groups, and you know, it's things I love. I'm not going to give to everything, but I love Humane Society. I love things that affect us, and I'm just able to do it. And I've been able to do it. My mother's that way, and she's always been that way. And when you give, you receive. And you know, and I have a relative that's a little young Leo, and Leos tend to be me. And I said, you've got to figure this out. You've got to think about others. This is not going to work in the long run, because you've got to think about others and give, and then it all comes back to you. I know that's probably something out of the Bible, but it's true. Well, I want to thank you for having me, and having Thomas, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And thanks, Krista, for the nice introduction.